Ladies and gentlemen, week 13. We didn't stream last week because we were preparing to get really fat with turkey. So we're back this week. Joe, I got to see you a couple of days ago, man. We got to go to a really fun game this weekend in LA. Beautiful Coliseum, beautiful weather. It was a lot of fun. I hadn't been to an away game like that in a really long time. It was an awesome way to watch football. Obviously, the turnout wasn't the way that we wanted, but I would go back 10 out of 10 times again. It was a great time. I had a really, really good time. It was good to see you. Hadn't seen you in a while. Did you have a good time this weekend?
Oh, it was a blast. It was a good place to see an away game. I mean, the weather is great. Stadium is really old, but gets the job done. There were surprisingly decent tailgates out there. I was a little impressed, pretty impressed by that. Um, the stadium isn't full, but it's not meant to be an NFL stadium. It's meant to be a college stadium, so it's kind of tough luck on that part. It looks more empty than it is.
Yeah, we talked about this a little over the weekend. It obviously, we were having people tell us in real time how the stadium looked as far as the crowd was concerned. People were saying that it looked empty. I was very surprised by how many people I thought turned out compared to what the media made it sound like as far as how many people actually turned out for games. So I don't think the Rams are in anywhere near as bad of a situation as everyone made it out to be. There was a good turnout for Saints fans, which I always think is great because I always applaud people that travel to other games. I was glad that you and I were able to make this one, but I thought that there was plenty of Rams turnout. I thought that there was a really good concert. We had to look a little while to find them outside of the stadium and stuff, but we found out where they were tailgating. I thought that they did a really good job of giving us just enough ribbing, but also having a really good time. We had a really good time this weekend, so that was fun. Other than that, there was some interesting football games for sure. Joe, how concerned were you that the Bengals were going to give the Browns their first win of the season this past week? Did
I thought,
go ahead. Sorry.
I thought there was a good chance it was going to happen. I mean, the Bengals are the kind of team that the Browns could have beaten.
Yeah, I agree.
Because their offense does struggle under pressure, and the Browns have a decent front four. But the Browns aren't very good. So
No, the Browns are definitely not good. When teams from Ohio play, though, it's all bets are off, right? Like anything can happen when the teams from Ohio come together and clash. I thought that the Browns actually, to me, this was their best game of the season. Forget the points scored and all that. I thought this was overall their best game of the season. It just, to me, they looked more like they had life in them, right? They looked like they were more interested in actually playing football. I thought that their front five, as far as on the offensive side of the ball, got good push, and I thought that they got appropriate pressure on Dalton. He's really bad. He continues to be bad, but so does Kaiser, so that limits them a bit, and their drops are still a really, really big part of the problem. So both of those teams going forward are just like, it's miserable. It's almost miserable to watch their games sometimes. It's like, how many mistakes can we pack into one game? And how many poor decisions can we pack into one game at a time? I definitely thought that was an interesting game from the weekend. Also, another thing that just comes out in the past couple of days is that after their game against the Redskins, the Giants are benching Eli Manning. Joe, give me your quick take on this. Like, give me your thoughts.
nothing changes. Still don't play any of your Giants.
Yeah, okay, definitely from a fantasy perspective, I think very little changes at all. I'm maybe a little less excited to play Evan Ingram now. Definitely less excited to play Sterling Shepard. Nobody was playing Eli Manning, hopefully before, but from a real football ownership perspective, the way that it has the outlook of the landscape of football. Tell me more about what your thoughts is and what kind of move you think this was.
It doesn't make any sense to me for a few reasons. One is that it's still early in this season. They aren't going to make the playoffs. That's obvious.
Yeah,
But it's still
they
too
were
early in this
officially
season.
eliminated from contention last week, so
Yeah.
they're not making it.
But it's still too early in this season, and by doing this, it really it's going to demotivate the veteran players. Those guys like Eli Manning, he's their leader, and he's doing the right things and saying the right things and
Absolutely.
all of that, which is what you'd expect from a guy like him. But it's still like it's clear that he is the best quarterback and gives them the best chance to win right now. And whenever you're in a situation where you're not playing the guy who gives you the best chance to win right now, the team is going to notice that. They're not stupid, and it's going to cause issues in the locker room, I suspect. In addition to that, there's a pretty good chance that this GM and this head coach won't be back next year. So it's not even like they're going to be able to evaluate how these other guys work in their system, because they're going to be in a new system more than likely. So it just doesn't make a lot of sense on a couple levels. It also really makes it seem like it's going to be tough for Eli to stay with the Giants next year, if they're benching him this early in the season. And I think that if I were the Giants, I would want to retain the option to keep him as a starter next year.
Yeah, I can't emphasize enough some of the things that you just said, especially with the not having an option moving forward, right? I also think that McAdoo will be fired after this year, although this move gives me a little bit of pause in maybe thinking that this was, because there's a lot of people saying now that this was a plan from the owner, the GM, and the head coach. This all together, this was their decision together. But that strikes me as a little bit strange. But you're right. To me, I just also think it's really funny. Like, just a week ago, we saw the Nathan Peterman experiment just implode, right? Like, it was one of the worst things in football. We didn't get to talk about it last week, but I mean, it was an egregiously bad move. I mean, Tyrod isn't a superstar. Like, he's not a superstar of the NFL, but he's well above average. Like, you can tell with stats with him in the game versus with him out of the game. They've even had games where he was hurt and they've had to play other people, and how poorly it went, right? So he's not
if the season ended before the Nathan Peterman game, they would have been in the playoffs.
Right. Right, like how do you derail that? Like, I understand they had a bad loss the week before, and he doesn't take a lot of chances, which maybe they seem like they want to. But Sean McDermott is a defensive guy. He doesn't want to take chances. He's not trying to go out there and sling around in some crazy offense. It really boggles my mind with the way that they did that. And now the Giants are going to go even further and do this to Eli Manning. And you're right, he's saying the right things, he's doing the right things. He's been about as classy as you could possibly do it. People have even said that there were only two people in the entire locker room at the end of the day, and it was Eli Manning and Davis Webb, and he was trying to mentor him on what they're doing. Like, those are really good signs. Hats off to Eli. But man, this seems to be such a slap in the face. And to me, this screams of a way, like, I've been looking the part of the day to see if there's like some huge money factor on the line. This seems exactly the way to screw someone out of extra money, right? But that's not the case here. That's not what this is all about. I think that they genuinely think that they're trying to do the best thing to win, and they're bad, and McAdoo is bad, and the line is bad, right? And now they've also had some injuries on defense. They just haven't panned out the same way that they had been in the previous couple of years. And so, like, I think that they're just trying to find a scapegoat here, and I think that Eli is even a poor scapegoat because, like you said, now they don't even have the option to really retain him in the future, and it's a very good possibility that this regime won't be here next year. It just screams all kind of strange to me, you know?
I mean, here's the thing. Like, Eli has not been the NFL's best quarterback, like, when he's been in the league at any point, but he's been a top 15 for sure, and occasionally a top 10 quarterback in the league for a long time.
Yeah.
And, if this guy can't succeed with these receivers, these running backs, and this offensive line, you're going to throw a rookie in there, and it's going to get better.
Right.
He's going to have a chance to improve or learn. No, he's just going to get sacked and throwing complete passes all the time.
Yeah, this is when
he's going to ruin his confidence. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, and we know that we've seen this in the past, that quarterback is a very volatile position, and sometimes the very first game even, right? Very first play sometimes is what kind of confidence do they have going into that play, and then can they retain that confidence moving forward? It's a very, very tough position, and trial by fire is not one of those. Like, quarterback is not one of those positions that I want to trial by fire. This is trial by fire in the worst way. I mean, people are now going to be aiming for the Giants. Like, everyone is hoping that this explodes in the worst possible way because Eli is such a classy dude, right? And he, they even did give him the option to still start, and then at the end of the game, some way through the game, try and phase him out. And he knew that his streak is on the line and that it would have an asterisk behind it, and he just said, no, I don't want to play. That's a smart move by him. I think that a lot of people are going to respect him for that move, and I ultimately think that he'll wind up in another place next year. I'm not going to sit here and predict how far they're going to go, but a pretty complete team with Eli, you could do a whole lot worse, right? Like I can tell you, the first people that come to mind is like the Jacksonville Jaguars. Eli makes better decisions than Bortles, that's for sure, right?
I mean, he's got strong links to the Jags with Coughlin, who's the guy there, and he won 2 Super Bowls with him, and then also strong links to the Broncos, where his brother went to end his career. So, and both of those teams are in a lot of ways primed if they had a competent quarterback to be Super Bowl contender, like legitimate Super Bowl contenders.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, Eli makes better decisions than either Brock Osweiler or Paxton Lynch or Blake Bortles. Like any of those guys, if they need a holdover for a year, they want to try and win. They want to usher in a new quarterback, and they don't want to do a trial by fire like smart teams, right? All those places have solid connections, and with this kind of thing in the job, I don't know. Maybe they just wanted him out. Maybe they just want a new era. But it seems like a very early and poor decision to me with the way that they handled the whole thing. It seems like it could have been done much better. So yeah, I think that was obviously the biggest news coming out this week, and I just think that it was a bit strange. So I wanted to get your thoughts on it. With that, we'll go into the rundown of the week's games. Very interesting week last week. I want to recap just real quick before we get into the new week. Just kind of strange. A really bad running back week. Like overall, there were not a lot of productive running backs. I think they had 4 or 5 guys that were above 20 points. That's the lowest of the season. For the wide receivers, they had a solid week. Like it wasn't anything crazy out of the ordinary. It was pretty good. We had obviously an insane week from Julio Jones. Keenan Allen continues to keep doing well because Phillip Rivers decided that they want to win now. And we had a couple of other guys well above 20, some more guys above 30, but a lot of guys in the high teens, which is going to win a lot of people a lot of games. And it makes for a lot of viable options in DFS as well, right? The difference between a 17-point guy and an 18-point guy, and maybe either one filled your lineup with the same amount of money. Sometimes that creates for a lot of a lot of clumping at the very top of the lineup. So it's a very interesting week for DFS was concerned. Tight ends went absolutely bananas this week. This was the tight end week that we've been waiting for a long time. I mean, it only took everyone being available on the main slate for to get a good tight end week, but it was a good tight end week. They actually delivered. Not a lot of injuries this week or anything. Even got some backup tight ends in the mix, and it was a decent quarterback week as well. It wasn't absolutely crazy, but we saw several 4 touchdown weeks and a bunch of games over 300 yards. So it was a good week, definitely overall for fantasy was concerned. This week seems to me to be a little bit more one-sided for each game, right? I think we're going to have more, I don't know about blowouts this week, but I think we're going to see more potentially double-digit wins and a lot of scoring from one team as opposed to what we've seen in the past couple of weeks.
Well, this week that just passed, there were a lot of blowouts.
That's true.
Vegas lost a lot of money actually this week because Vegas typically loses when the favorites win. If all the favorites win, because people do these parlays with the favorites all winning. So if all the favorites cover, Vegas typically loses. They lost a lot of money this week because the favorites just beat the crap out of the underdogs in most of the games.
Yeah.
Patriots were favored by 16 and covered.
Yeah.
The Eagles were favored by 14. The Falcons were favored by at least 10, and all of these teams covered.
Yeah.
I think the only huge favorite that didn't cover was the Packers. The Steelers didn't cover over the Packers.
Right. And a decent amount of overs this week as well. A lot of people covered with fairly high game scores as well. So yeah, it was a bit of a crazy week. You're right. More double digit lines than I've seen in quite a while. Like and in the NFL, that's the scariest thing. I mean, points in the NFL is one of the safest bets that you can take. Home dogs are one of the best bets that you can take in and around the league. And I mean, even bad teams, when you get to 10 plus points, you're talking about 2 full touchdowns. It's very difficult, especially teams with decent, even remotely decent defenses. That's tough to do, man. That's really tough to do. So,
yeah, but we're getting to that part in the season where you really know who the good and the bad teams are, and it seems that this year in the NFL, there's a few really good teams and a few really bad teams, and then a lot of people in the middle. And this week, it just so happened that the really good teams got matched up against the really bad teams.
Right. I was just about to say that. You took the words out of my mouth. Week 12 was the men playing the boys, right? And then all of the random teenagers got left to hang out in the middle, right? The men just dominated the boys this weekend, and so that was very interesting to see as well. It definitely provided some clarity as to where the power lies in the NFL. So that was pretty good. sometimes you get those matchups those weeks, and it's like upset city, right? So this week it was actually very interesting to see that the powerful players in the NFL are the powerful players in the NFL. So moving forward into week 13, we have another week with no buys. It's absolutely beautiful. This is a week where some people start to get a huge view as far as clarity is concerned, whether they're going to be in the playoffs, not be in the playoffs. Some people start playoffs this week. If you do like systems where you have double drafts, those are all going to be starting this week. So that means where like you may have 20 teams in your league, and there's two separate 10-man drafts, so you can play people that have the same players as you potentially. Those drafts will start, or those playoffs will start this week, so that they can get them all done before week 16. And then other than that, this is usually the last week before playoffs start for a bunch of other people. So you got a pretty good idea of where you are. We're going to try and help you with that last week to try and get you over the hump. Joe, this is one of those weeks where we're done on the waiver wire as far as deciding who's going to pan out for the rest of the season, right? There's no more of that. There is no panning out. The season is here. If you haven't made your decisions by now, you're never going to make them, right? So at this point, this is where I start to advocate a shift as far as people are concerned. You still want to be a week ahead in this aspect as well. So if you know that your defense is going to have a really tough or they have a really great matchup this week, but a really horrible matchup for the next 2 weeks, pick up that defense that's got the great matchup for the next 2 weeks, right? This is all preparing for the playoffs and all preparing for a way to make sure that nobody snatches up your prized gem. But the fact still remains that this week is the week that you need to win, right? You need to win every single week moving forward to make sure that you don't get shoved out of the playoffs. So is there anything that you do differently these coming up weeks to try and prep to make sure that you put yourself in a positive position before the playoffs? Because most trade deadlines are over now as well.
Yeah, I start looking at backup running backs of people that I have.
Yes.
That I know will be the guy.
Right.
If it's one of these things that's going to go in no committee, if my starter gets hurt, I don't care.
Right.
But if there's a guy that I know will be the guy, Tevin Coleman won't be. This is a bad example because he won't be on the waiver wire. But
sure. But Tevin Coleman, Derrick Henry, those kind of guys, like
Derrick Henry, these kind of guys, the ones that you know will be the guy, regardless of who it is, really. That's who you want to pick up. Melvin Gordon's backup, this Eckler guy seems to be like he'll be the guy if something happened to Gordon. You want to make sure that you're locked up in those cases. Whereas before, because of bye weeks and stuff, you didn't necessarily want to do that. You needed to have some more variety so you could get through the bye weeks. That's all gone. Anybody that was speculative, get rid of them.
Yep.
At this point, if there's nobody else, you can hang on to them if you have a reason to believe they'll be better. But the only people you might want to even think about speculating on at this point is maybe some of the 49ers in case Garoppolo does something. We just don't know.
That's fair.
But I wouldn't play any of them. But if you want to roster some of those guys and see what happens this week, and if Garoppolo targets Goodwin 25 times or something, then you can play him next week.
Right. Even then, you're still going to be speculative for the last couple of weeks of the season. You're going to be playing the roulette for the playoffs. But those are definitely adds, and this is just very uncommon that a quarterback will make his start with a lot of promise, with a good OC 13 weeks into the season. It's just not common, so it's a little bit of an anomaly.
The only other thing that I look at is if you have one of these second-tier quarterbacks as a starter, I'll look at their schedule and look at other second-tier quarterbacks who may not be rostered and try to sort out what I want to do if I get to the playoffs, right? So making sure that I have quarterbacks who aren't playing the Steelers or who aren't playing the Super Saints rather than the bad Saints, depending on what they're going to be.
Dr. Jekyll Saints or the Mr. Hyde Saints. Jesus.
Yeah. But you want to make sure that you don't get your quarterback playing the Vikings or something like that. If that quarterback is a second tier guy, right? So if you're choosing between Mariota and Phil, like Phil has the easier schedule, you want to make sure that you get Phil on the roster to help you out. Don't do something stupid and sit Tom Brady or something. But don't even think about that. But we'll talk about this next week. But yeah, you should be, if you have matchup play quarterbacks, you might want to roster more of them with the extra spots that you're saving by not needing to play bye week players.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Quarterback is by far the most the most common that I do this for, but if it's getting into the late parts of the season, I've definitely made the playoffs, regardless of what happens next week. Especially if I've already locked up like a round one bye or something like that, or this week doesn't have the ability to change my seeding at all. Speculative players, see you later, and I'm looking to pick up backup quarterbacks and backup defenses. Those are the two that I'm looking to do more than anything else. Tight end has sort of crept in this year because of the way that there's just been so few tight ends that are viable. So you potentially may need to roster one for the future as far as matchups are concerned for tight end. But usually my other guys, I'm just starting my studs, and then I'm usually using the speculative area to roster people who are good matchups for the playoffs. So with that, let's go into what's going to happen in Week 13, and we can start you guys off with the good matchups for this week. We can also talk about some DFS along the way, and we'll tell you guys what we think is going to happen this coming week. So to kick it off, tomorrow is going to be the Redskins and the Cowboys. Joe, the Cowboys have just been absolutely garbage the last couple of weeks with Zeke being out, and especially with Tyron Smith being out as well. He was a major problem, but even with him back in the lineup periodically, now they've lost another lineman, Zach Martin. It's just really, really rough over there. Do you see it getting any better with this game against the Redskins?
I think that it will get better in this game against the Redskins because it can't get any worse. They scored 22 points in the last 3 weeks, and I think that Dak has more turnovers in the last 3 weeks than he has in all of his previous games combined in the NFL. Like, it's just been a total nightmare. Tyron Smith should be back this week. He played a bit last week, and there's been I should say this. This is not your typical Thursday night game because both of these teams played on Thursday last week. So you're allowed to play people this week.
That's true.
They've had a full week to do a normal. This is a normal week for them, basically. So this is not a normal Thursday night game. You can play people, but yeah, back to the Cowboys. I think they'll be a little better. I think Tyron Smith is the main thing that they need. Zach Martin is really, really good, and they will miss him. But it's easier to cover up for a missed guard than it is for a missed left tackle. That being said, I don't think they'll be great. I don't see them going back to scoring 4 and 5 touchdowns a week. They're not going to do that without Zeke. That much is clear. Their receivers don't create separation, and Dak doesn't throw it accurate enough. So no, I don't. I'm not advocating to start Dak or anything like that. I think you can put Alfred Morris or Rod Smith as a flex, but that's really the best you're going to get out of them.
Yeah, I'm probably not even advocating I'm not advocating anyone from the Cowboys side. I'm super impressed with the Redskins this year. They've gone through so many. They have enough injured players to probably field an entire new football team. They have enough people on injured reserve just to probably like start against the Browns, I would think. They have enough people legitimately just on injured reserve that could really, play a solid football game. And they've just continued to play what I consider above their pay grade on defense, and just Kirk Cousins, the way that they play a timing offense just is very, very difficult to defend, and they've been very good at it. Vernon Davis has been a very versatile piece for them this year. He's been a great asset to them. So I'm reading here that Zach Martin is likely to play. I think even with their entire line back, they're still just not the same. I'm really glad this is happening because I've been trying to tell people that Dak is the same Dak as he was in college, still in the NFL. He's the same person. I know that I think he wound up getting MVP or defense or rookie of the year last year, or whatever, over Zeke and all that. People are just quarterback centric, right? When they're winning, everybody wants to blame, or everybody wants to put the reward on the quarterback, and when they're losing, everybody wants to blame the quarterback. I've just been blaming the quarterback the entire time, right? I'm not saying that he's been bad for fantasy, right? Dak was a solid pick for fantasy this year, at least until Zeke went out, and without him, he is useless. Basically, he drops his eyes when rush comes. He really looks to move too quickly. He doesn't have good pocket presence, and just he's usually safe until then he needs to not be safe, or he needs to be safe, and then he just does erratic things with the ball. Like he's not that good. He's fine. He's fine. Yeah, their receivers aren't giving him a whole lot of help either. You're right.
They don't fit his skill set. I mean, he has almost this kind of skill set of like run around and then throw to an open guy. And these receivers just don't ever get separation ever.
Right.
That's not the kind of player that Dez is. Tony was saying it on national TV on Thanksgiving. That's not who Dez is. You got to throw him the jump ball and let him go get it.
Yeah.
Throw it in a place that only he can get it, and then have him try to win like a 60-40 ball. That's just his strength, and
Yeah.
Dak isn't accurate enough to do that consistently.
Yeah, especially with the way that Dez is playing now. Like you and I talked about this off stream previously, that Dez is just not an elite receiver anymore. But he has a skill set and it's very specific, and if you can utilize it well, he's still productive. And so, and that's great. I mean, you have to be able to notice those things and go to it. I mean, who would notice it better than Tony Romo? I mean, he played with him most of his career and had his most productive seasons with him. So, yeah, I mean, I just don't think that Dak is very useful at this point. Until Zeke gets back, I just don't think that they're the same offense. And God forbid if they lose any more linemen, I think that it's going to continue to be worrisome for the coming years. So I think that this is it's all or none, right? They need to be an all or none type of offense, and this is the none version. So I think the Redskins are just going to beat down on them basically. I mean, I advocate as always playing like Kirk Cousins, and Jamison Crowder has finally come on at this part of the season. It's great to have him. If you held through the bad, you're definitely reaping the rewards of the good. So yeah, I see the Redskins winning this game pretty handily, and I definitely don't recommend playing any of the Cowboys.
So I have a quick question here for you, Mike. Sean Lee's probably going to be out again, which means that Dallas's defense is also going to have issues. Somehow against the Giants, who are the worst, worse than the Browns at covering the tight end, Vernon Davis was targeted only once last week.
Yeah.
This week, Dallas's strength on defense is DeMarcus Lawrence, and that's the only thing that they have going for them.
Yeah.
I think that the reason that is because the Giants' strength is altered their defensive line. I think that's the reason that Vernon Davis didn't get very many targets last week. He was blocking a lot.
Right. I think he's got a block.
Is it going to happen again?
I would say so. I think it would behoove the Redskins to make sure that they block first, and if they can get a pocket for Cousins, I mean, he can do whatever he wants to him if they give him any sort of pocket whatsoever. Now, the difference is that this Redskins line, even with it being beat up, is just better than the Giants is. So they may not need him quite as much. So I think that you'll see some more targets because he won't need to stay in and block on every play. And his strength is because he's very athletic. He can get downfield very quickly. He can run a lot of route options. He's got pretty much the entire tight end route tree to him. So I think you'll see more targets this week, probably in the 4 or 5 range. I don't think you're going to see a 9-target game, but I don't think you're going to see a 0-target game either. I think you're going to see some blocking, and I think you're going to see some route running. So if he's cheap on DFS this week, I didn't even check his price. If he's cheap on DFS this week, I think he's a viable option. If you absolutely have to start him in your season long, I'm okay with that. But he's probably not the tight end that I'm like looking to make a play on this week.
Yeah, I just thought that was an important thing to address because he has been a lot of people's number 1 tight end since Jordan Reed's been out, and he's delivered for the most part. Mm-hmm. But last week was a noticeable 0.
Yeah, it was. I think you brought up the exact point. It was just because he had to stay in and block, and I do think that I just think it's different circumstances this week, at least to an extent.
Yeah. So the next game, Chiefs at the Jets. The Chiefs are in total free fall, and the Jets they gave Carolina a good game until they choked it up at the end. What's going on? What do we do with the Chiefs? Can you play any of these guys anymore?
I mean, until Andy Reid shows me very decisively that he wants to win again, no. Like it's a definitive, absolute no. He was calling an excellent game plan earlier on in the year. I don't know what he decided to change and made that different. I've watched a lot of Chiefs this year, way more in the second half than I have liked to. But I mean, they are just in shambles, and it's Andy Reid. The players haven't changed. I mean, we've known what Alex Smith is for an entire 10 years now. I mean, we've seen, once again, we've said this 1,000 times, rip the name off the back of Kareem Hunt's jersey. He's Chiefs running back, right? Chiefs running back is what we know Chiefs running back is. Tyreek Hill is pretty obviously a good weapon. He hasn't changed by any means. Travis Kelce hasn't changed by any means. He's been the only one that's even remotely weathered this storm. And it's all been on Andy Reid and his play calling. It's been very strange. I'm not exactly sure what the problem is, but until they show me something differently, I'm not playing any of them. I'll play Kelce. That's it. That's the only one that I'm willing to play. I think you
Yeah.
have to play Hunt just because with the potential for, if they do decide to win, he will literally win you the game. But if I have a much better option at this point, or not a much better option, but rather another potential RB2 kind of guy, I'll probably play him if my playoffs are coming up. I'm not afraid to play the Jets, though, especially in this case. Kearse and Anderson, Chiefs give up so many yards to receivers on defense. McCown will keep the ship steady, and I think that he will continue to have production with them. I don't know if I'm really willing to play anybody else from that game. I think it's those 3 or 4. Yeah.
Yeah, the Jets running back situation's kind of a mess right now.
It's
with
just tough
Forte
to predict, right?
Forte being kind of injured, and I mean they're not that good of an offense to begin with, and then having three guys getting touches is just no good.
Yep.
It's pretty dire on the Kansas City secondary. They brought back Darrelle Revis, so that's how you know it's bad. So don't be afraid to play the Jets receivers. This Kansas City's defense is not the one that it was last year. You can throw against them. Yeah, so don't play your Chiefs. Sad.
Yes.
Patriots at the Bills. I haven't looked at what the line is on this one. I'm assuming it's going to be at least 10 in a road game for the Patriots. But this Bills team, they can't decide if they want to tank or if they want to make it the playoffs this year. They change their mind on a week-to-week basis. So what are we going to get out of them this week?
I don't think we get a choice out of them this week, right? I think that the one word that describes this game is yikes. I don't think that I just don't think that the Bills are going to have a choice this week. I mean, the Patriots are just kings of the NFC or the AFC East, right? So when they're especially good in their divisional games, I just don't see that this is really one that the Bills can pull out. And I also just don't think that they're going to be able to formulate that much offense. Like I just don't think they will be able to. I mean, I'm playing Shady, obviously. I'm willing to play Charles Clay too, but other than that, I mean, I'm just going to play all of my Patriots essentially. Yeah.
Yep. I mean, yeah, I definitely agree. If I had to guess, I'd say this is less likely to be a Cooks week because the Bills play deep zone, and it's just going to be hard for him to get behind them. That being said, in tournament play, he's always a guy you can play because he's always got the capability of going, 5 catches for 150 yards. But I think we've done a pretty good job actually of calling when he's going to go nuts and when he's not this year for the most part.
Yeah, I mean, it's to me it's pretty obvious, when he's going to go nuts and when he's not. And these are the type of games that he's just unlikely to go nuts, not because he doesn't have the capability to, because the Patriots don't really have a reason to, right? More than anything else.
They're not going to need him, and the Bills are going to play a soft zone, which means that he's just going to drive the cornerback deep, drive the safety deep, and then they're going to throw it to Gronk and James White and Danny Amendola underneath, and they're going to win the game.
That's exactly right. I was about to say, if this is anything that I've seen before, this is a James White, Danny Amendola kind of game, right?
Yeah, I mean, the safe games are their kind of games. And, I think the Patriots are actually going to run the ball a lot here.
I was about to say, they have to.
It's unfortunate because they've got a little bit of a mess going on between Rex Burkhead and Deion Lewis, with Burkhead getting 2 touchdowns last week. That was from both from close range, so that was kind of frustrating for Deion Lewis owners. Yeah. Deion Lewis is still the guy. Rex Burkhead is the number 2. But he's a guy who is flexible at this point, especially in a game like this where they're probably going to run it a lot. I can see, 15 carries for Deion Lewis and 10 for Rex Burkhead as a realistic possibility here.
Yeah, I think that's a very good outlook as to how this game is going to go. Next game is Broncos Dolphins. I think that it's been confirmed that Cutler will start this game against the Broncos. If Cutler's in the lineup, I don't know that I'm super interested in this game. They'll probably give Jarvis Landry a tough time catching a whole lot of balls here. I don't know that I want anyone in this game, to be honest with you.
The only person that I want Kenyon Drake. Not because I think he's spectacular. I think he's solid. He's shown the ability to make a big play. The Broncos have shown the ability to give up the big play, and Damian Williams is out. So Kenyon Drake is
just from
the
a
guy.
volume standpoint.
Yeah, he's the guy from a volume standpoint. You're going to be able to get him for cheap. And at this point in the season, like a running back who's getting most or all of the carries is the guy you want to play. So I think he's a good play. The rest of it, this Broncos defense is still pretty tough to throw against unless you're the Eagles. Aqib Talib is out, but they still have Chris Harris and Bradley Roby, so it's not like it's that much easier to throw on him now than it was last week.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I'm just not super interested in playing a whole lot of players from this game. I think this is going to be a real murky one. I just think it's going to be a tough sledding for both teams. Period.
It's some bad teams.
Next game is 49ers Bears.
Play Jordan Howard.
Play Carlos Hyde.
From last week, Jordan Howard really disappointed, and the reason is that the Eagles beat the crap out of the Bears from the start, and so the Bears just didn't get a chance to run it very much. Additionally, the Eagles' front four is spectacular, probably the best in the league.
It sure looks like it right now.
This week, or at least they're playing the best. Yeah, they're playing the best in the league.
Yeah.
This week they're playing the Niners, who are one of the worst rush defense teams in the league, and who are almost certainly not going to blow them out. The Niners may win this game. I mean, Jimmy Garoppolo may come out and play lights out and play well. It's unlikely that this Niners team, even with a better quarterback play, is talented enough to blow out anybody. So I think the Bears stay close enough that Howard gets his touches, and he's, don't get shy because of what happened last week. Play him again.
Yeah, 100%. I said this a couple of weeks ago when we were talking about who the potential benefactor was of Pierre Garçon being out, and it was Carlos Hyde. And you could see that last week. I think he had 13 targets or something like that, something crazy. I think he had double-digit targets. They haven't been great at running the ball, and the Bears' defense is better than people expect, but it's just hard to cover so many targets to a running back, period. And I think he's going to get a lot of work, and especially PPR leagues this late in the season, it's very tough to find people that are going to get that much work and free points, basically. So I would definitely be looking to play him. I think Jimmy plays pretty well. I don't think he's a bad quarterback by any means. I think he's capable. I don't think he's going to be the same as he was with the Patriots. We've seen that they succeed with everyone back there. So I think he was put in a pretty good position to succeed. So, but Kyle Shanahan is a good offensive coordinator. We haven't been saying that all of a sudden to just pull the plug out now. I think that he'll put him in a position to succeed. I think that there's a good chance that you could see another X-receiver emerge. I just don't know who it is. Things point to it being one of Aldrick Robinson or their backup not Trent Taylor. Kid's name is escaping me right now. They have another person on their roster. I'll remember before the end of the stream. But I'm just not willing to bet on that person in week 13. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and this is what I was alluding to earlier in the show is this. We don't know what Jimmy Garoppolo is going to do. We don't really know who's going to emerge as his favorite target. It's going to be the X receiver, but who that's going to be, we're not really sure about. Right. It could even end up being Marquise Goodwin. We don't know. He's the most talented guy. He doesn't prototype as an X, but
right.
Maybe they have to make do with it. Who knows?
Yeah, that's why my skepticism is there.
So if you want to pick one up, what you're saying is pick one up and hold on to him and see what happens. If one of them emerges as like the Shanahan guy, then you're like, all right, great, we can roll with this the rest of the way.
Right.
But playing them this week is a little risky.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, Lions Ravens is the next game. This is going to be an interesting one for sure. The Ravens, I'll tell you honestly, the most beneficial thing for the Ravens that has come from the end of this season is that they're just good enough. They're just back enough to where Justin
Tucker is back, baby.
Yep, they're just good enough to where Tucker is where he needs to be again. So he's really the only person that I want to start from there. I cannot stress this heavily enough. Please listen to me. I had a rant about this earlier in the season. I don't want to have to go on it again. Don't play Danny Woodhead. He's going to die. He's gonna die. He's like 5'8", like 160. He's gonna die. Okay, they're gonna put him out there. They're gonna give him a lot of carries. He basically took over what everything Javorius Allen was doing, and I understand that Buck Allen basically got relegated. He only had like 7 plays out of 67. Right? That's not a good number. You don't want that guy to really be on your fantasy team. But don't resort to Danny Woodhead. He might get you a couple of points, but I'm telling you he's going to get hurt again. Right? So if you're betting on anyone, bet on Alex Collins. Don't bet on any of their receivers. Don't bet on Flacco. Bet on some of the Lions players like Golden Tate and Marvin Jones. Actually, probably not Marvin Jones because they cover big receivers pretty well. Yeah, I really just want like Stafford and Tate, really, and Tucker. That's it.
Yeah, it's a tough one whenever the Ravens play because their offense is so bad and their defense is pretty good.
Mhm.
I'm not as down on Woodhead as you are if you accept the risk that he very well could get hurt in the first quarter. So I
Yeah,
played him last week in the league actually in PPR leagues. Don't play him in standard leagues ever.
ever,
Um,
never.
but PPR league he's like a decent flex play with RB2 upside if he starts getting goal line carries. Um, but he just runs a huge
Goal
risk
line
of
carries, pfft, kick it
in
from
San
the
Diego he got a
kick
lot
it
of goal
from
line
the
carries.
10, dude. Come on, they kick everything.
If you prefer to kick it from like the 50, but um, yeah. So I think he's PPR or flex worthy in PPR as long as you accept that you may make it a zero because you might get hurt.
Yeah, I do think that's
In
fair.
bigger leagues, you always that's kind of an issue anyway. So
Right, right. If you've been holding on to him in like a really big league, like maybe a 16 teamer or something like that, and you absolutely have to play him, go ahead and do it. But like, I can tell you this, I would rather play like Carlos Hyde and Matt Breida, right, over having to start Danny Woodhead personally. Like I'm that worried that he will get hurt and it will not be worth it. That's just the way that I am. So, yeah, if you accept that he could go out in the first quarter and get you 2 points, period, then yeah, I guess go ahead and roll him out.
all right. Well, tell us how you really feel about Danny Whitehead. So the next game we're going to talk about is Vikings at the Falcons. This is certainly the game. Well, this is one of the two biggest games of the week
It's
from
the
a
game
football
of the
perspective.
week. It's the
From a football
game of the
perspective,
week.
certainly one of the two games of the week. Mike thinks it's the game of the week from a fantasy perspective.
It's the game of the week.
Why do you think that?
I think that the players for the Falcons that have been the go-to guys will continue to be the go-to guys here. I think that they finally figured out how to throw to one Julio Jones. Not that hard. It's pretty easy. Showed last weekend he makes it about as easy as possible to throw to him. He had 253 yards. By the way, quick stat. I think I posted this in our chat. 250-yard games. Julio Jones has 3. No one else in NFL history has more than 1. And in history includes that Jerry Rice guy who was pretty good. If nobody remembers.
Give him the damn ball.
Yeah, just it's like don't even think about it. Just hand it over, right? Just give it to him. Do it every time if you can. If you have the opportunity, throw it to him. Mohamed Sanu even knows to throw it to Julio Jones, right? Like it's not hard at all. Even without that 50-yard pass, he still had like a 38-point day, right? So just give him the ball. It's not hard. I do think with Devontae Freeman coming back, I actually think he's better against the Vikings than Tevin Coleman would be. So he's gonna play this week. I think he's better for this offense. I don't think that he'll detract much from Julio Jones. I think that they have figured out that like, hey, if we're gonna win games, we kind of need to do this thing. So that's good. And I think those are the two to play from the Falcons side. And then honestly, for the Vikings, I just think everyone is viable right now. They are moving the ball with such good pace that Lat Murray and Jerick McKinnon are both playable. And I think Case Keenum is very playable. I think Diggs is very playable. And I think that Thielen is obviously very playable. And even Rudolph is playable. Like, I just don't think that there's going to be anyone who's, like, truly shut out of this offense. If I had to pick one more than anyone else, I do think that this is a Diggs week. I think this is a really good week for Diggs.
Yeah, I agree with mostly everything that you said. I'm going to say that I think that Julio comes back down to earth and gets less than 100 yards and no touchdowns.
Less than 100 yards, no touchdowns. I think that Julio has more like a 6 for 80 and 1 stat line because I think that to have any chance of winning this game, he needs to score. I think they need to score through Julio.
Yep, I don't think they learned their lesson. I think they're stupid still, and I think
hope
that
they're stupid still, but
and I think Xavier Rhodes is pretty good. So
Xavier Rhodes is very good.
What they've done in the past when the other team really focuses on shutting down Julio, even under Shanahan, they did this last year, is they just ignore him, and they've done it much of the year this year. And I just have a feeling that it might happen again. I don't think he's going to get 0 catches. I mean, play him in season long, but in DFS, I'd shy away.
Yeah, I understand that. I understand that sentiment for sure. I just think that overall, this will have the greatest quantity of productive fantasy players.
Who'd have thought that the Case Keenum Vikings would carry so many fantasy players?
I know, 6 fantasy players.
Bucks Packers. What a stinker.
Joe,
And Doug Martin is out. Jameis Winston is out. Aaron Rodgers obviously is out. What do we do in this game?
I think this is actually one of those games where it's pretty good clarity, right? I'm playing Jamal Williams and I'm going to play Mike Evans, and that's it. I'm going to wrap it up and go.
Yeah, you can play the guy Devontae Parker. No. Devontae Adams. That's the one. You can play Devontae Adams.
Devontae Adams, just because Hundley likes him so much, I presume you
know,
right?
Hundley likes him. You're just going to get 10 targets even if he's covered. Hundley just likes him. So you play Devontae Adams. I don't know why I said Devontae Parker. Sorry, I totally blanked on his name. I knew his name was Devontae.
Got a lot of players floating around in our head, you know?
A lot of Devontae's floating around in our head. You can play Devontae Adams. But yeah, Mike Evans and
Jamal Williams.
Jamal Williams are the only other people that you should be interested in.
Yeah. Easy.
Brett Hundley looked competent the other day, so that was exciting. If he can keep that up, that might be good for all of you people who have been holding on to Randall Cobb and Jordy Nelson.
For some reason he just hates Jordy Nelson. It's because way that
Jordy's
plays,
not good. Yeah.
It's the way that Jordy plays meshes so well with Aaron Rodgers, and Aaron Rodgers just trusts him a lot in the red zone. That's where he makes his money. So.
Yep.
All right, next game, Texans Titans.
Yuck.
Yeah, that's a pretty good way to put this.
Except for DeAndre Hopkins, he's just gonna go punch more cornerbacks in the chest and get first downs.
Yeah, that's exactly right. The Titans secondary is just ass, and DeAndre Hopkins will embarrass them regardless. Like even if while targeting DeAndre Hopkins, they throw like 2 interceptions, he'll just have like 8 more catches for like 150 yards and a touchdown. So that's fine.
Yeah. Interceptions don't hurt him. It's not his problem.
That's exactly right. So it's perfectly fine. And it'll just give him more opportunities to have to throw the ball. So it's fine.
In PPR leagues, this could be a decent DeMarco Murray game because he's the catching back and you can't run on the Texans. Could also be a good week for I am just totally blanking on names. The tight end, Delaney Walker. I have pictures of these people in my head and can't get their names right.
They're just smiling at you.
Yeah, it could also be a good Delaney Walker week. The Texans aren't great against the pass, and if Mariota was playing as well as he was playing earlier on in the season, this would be like a prime matchup for Rashard Matthews and Mariota and all of this stuff. But Mariota's just playing like poo lately, and it's just hard to trust him right now.
Yeah, it's really tough to trust him. I wouldn't play Mariota with any confidence at all whatsoever. Rashard Matthews, he just still loves though, and so I'd probably be willing to. If I've made it this long with Rashard Matthews in my lineup and season long, I'm probably gonna keep rolling with him at this point. But yeah, I think Delaney Walker is getting back on track. He had a great week last week. Not great, but he had a score and he had a good a healthy stat line even without the score. So those are the kind of things that I look for, especially in tight ends. So, yeah, I would continue to play those two. Corey Davis is a concern, but I think he's a next year's concern, like a good concern. Like he's not bad. They're doing the right thing with him. I think he's still a little hobbled, but I think he's a concern for next year, not this year. I think that the chemistry with Rashard Matthews and Delaney Walker is going to stay. And more than anything, the Titans are. I believe they're still leading their division, and so they're playing for playoffs right now, right? So they're not trying to try anything new and experimental. They want to try and make the playoffs, so they're going to do everything that they can to try and win that. So, yeah, I think that those are the 3 or 4 players that are worth throwing out there.
Sure. So next game, Colts Jags. I'll take this one real quick. Play Leonard Fournette. Don't play anybody else. Next game, Browns Chargers. Oh, and Jags D. All right. Next game is Browns Chargers. The Chargers are back, baby. They're on fire right now. Phil is rolling. Keenan Allen is as hottest receiver in the league 2 weeks in a row. Anybody else? What do we like?
I mean Hunter Henry. They still don't the Browns still don't cover tight ends, right? We didn't all of a sudden start covering tight ends. There's going to be a lot of pressure on Kaiser in this game. I mean, the Chargers boast 2 really good defensive ends in Joey Bosa and Melvin Ingram, or they play them as ends, essentially. So there's going to be good pressure here. I think there's going to be a lot of dump-offs to Duke Johnson. Joe, we can't get out of this game without talking about the return of Josh Gordon, though, right? At least from a real football perspective, it will be very interesting to see him at least get back on the field and play. I wish the best of the young man. I hope that he's doing well. A lot of media has been floating around him this week. Hopefully he's been rehabbed and he's been good. Joe, I'm going to make a prediction here. This seems like a blowout game for the Chargers, right? The Chargers have basically returned. Phil has decided that they want to win, so he's throwing the ball all around. It seems like Anthony Lynn has given him the keys to the kingdom, which I believe in his however many year plus decade career he's earned, right? Keenan is going to be an absolute monster in this game, but I do also believe that this game will be a bit closer than people realize. And if Josh Gordon and Corey Coleman can just catch the ball at all, that's all they need to do. They don't need to be spectacular. They just need to not drop the football because the Browns have so many drops over the past couple of weeks. I think they can keep this game closer and at least more fantasy productive than people think. Like, I think this will actually be a productive DeShone Kizer week because he has no way to screw it up this badly. And I think that Corey Coleman will actually be a pretty good play this week. I don't know who's going to see Casey Hayward, but I think that both of these receivers can actually beat him. I think they're both very talented. Like even Gordon, I'm not like sitting here trying to put a lot of money on him. I'm not saying that he's going to have an insane stat line, but the guy didn't forget his athleticism. He's been in very good shape all this time that he's been away from football. And I mean, all the videos and everything lead me to believe that he's probably still fine. So I don't think that I'm playing anyone on the Browns. Like, I'm not playing Josh Gordon, but I'll play Duke Johnson, and I'll definitely play Corey Coleman. And I think that this game will just be closer in general than most people think.
Yeah, I mean, I'll confess this. I'm actually playing Corey Coleman in one of my fantasy leagues this week. I had been playing Crabtree or Devontae Parker, but Crabtree is out, and Devontae Parker is playing the Broncos. So I said, what the heck, let's go with Corey Coleman.
Well, Joe, let me ask you a question. Let me stop you right there. I think that's actually a really good point that you bring up. Real scenarios are always better than hypotheticals, right? If Devontae Parker was not playing the Broncos, would you still consider playing Corey Coleman over him just with the way that they've both been playing?
With Cutler back, I'd probably shade to Devontae Parker. Cutler likes him. If Matt Moore were playing, then definitely would not ever play Devontae Parker. Matt Moore doesn't like him. I don't know what he did.
He does.
But
he loves Kenny Stills. He loves Kenny
Stills. Gets all the targets.
Yeah.
So, it's this backup quarterback, backup receiver thing that we've talked about before.
Yeah, for sure. So it's actually an excellent point. We'll use that next year when talking to people about this kind of thing. It's definitely true.
Yeah, but yeah, I think at that point it's a toss-up. I just kind of like Cutler and Devontae Parker. Like in every game that Cutler has played, Parker gets like 4 catches for 60 yards as a floor. So that's a stat line I'm comfortable with for my worst receiver in a PPR league. I think Coleman has better upside probably, but with Kizer it's just a little more erratic.
Yeah, no doubt with Kizer it's a little more erratic. I think that's a good point that you bring up with Cutler and Parker, the connection and being him having a basic floor of 4 for 60. I think that Coleman probably has that floor of every game he's played this season, probably somewhere right around there. So
does.
I don't think that there's a bad option between those two. What I was just trying to emphasize is that regardless of how your other receivers are playing, Coleman is a viable option at this point in the season, definitely. Especially. So
he's a legitimate wide receiver 3, I think.
Yeah, I think he's a super legit wide receiver 3 with wide receiver 2 upside. And if Kizer was better, I mean, I would give him legit budding for high wide receiver 2 category.
Yeah, talent-wise, he's got it. It's just he needs the ball.
Right. I just think that with an added distraction this week, it could potentially wind up being very beneficial for him. So we'll see how that plays out. I'll be tuned into that game, if for nothing else, just to see a return of a good football player, and hopefully he can keep his nose clean. Next game is Rams-Cardinals. Joe, we talked about this one pretty briefly off stream, and we were talking about how the Rams may just beat the snot out of the Cardinals this week. The Rams have been playing good football, and it's very interesting to see with the news coming out about Sean McVay making audibles at the line, basically, for Goff. I want to see if the Cardinals maybe disguise some of their looks until after the comms go away. I think that'll be a very interesting thing to look at this week. The Cardinals, for all that they haven't played great this year, they have playmakers on defense and they have leaders on defense. Tyrann Mathieu and Patrick Peterson played together for quite a long time now, and they're both smart, very intelligent football players. Right? They have just a nose for the football in some way or another, and they find a way to make plays. I'm very interested to see what's going to happen here. And Bruce Arians is a smart coach too. So I'm interested to see how this goes along. I expect the Rams to pretty handily take care of the Cardinals. Do you expect there to be any producers on the Cardinals side of the ball this week?
You know, I don't know. I mean, Adrian Peterson's going to get a lot of touches again.
Right.
But he's not been exceptionally productive with them, and that's a little bit troublesome. It's like rare that you don't recommend that you say somebody's going to get almost 20 touches for sure, and you're still not sure if you should play them. But that's kind of the situation Adrian Peterson's been in. The Rams did a really good job of bottling up the Saints rushing game with Mark Ingram last week. Ingram had like less than 3 yards of carry for the first time all season.
Yeah.
Kamara also had less than 3 yards of carry if you exclude his 75-yard touchdown run.
Right.
So
I think we can all agree that Kamara has been pretty special this year, and sometimes there's just nothing you can do about a player that just decides.
But there's just one play, right? I mean, he had one huge play, which can happen at any time. You just get good blocking, and he made one guy miss, and he was gone, and he's good enough to do that.
Right.
At this point,
I think he had 5 for 87 overall, and so that's 4 for 12 basically. So he had 3 yards of carry besides the 75-yard run.
Yeah, so I mean, the Saints were a really good rushing team, struggled to run the ball.
Right.
And the Cardinals are not a really good rushing team, so I wouldn't be too excited about AP here.
What about Larry?
He's the go-to Cardinals guy. So I'm not excited about any of them personally. Larry, I mean, other than Larry, I think you can play Larry.
That's what I was gonna say. What about Larry?
I think you can play Larry. I mean, they move him around enough that he's like kind of immune to shut down corners if you're afraid of Janoris Jenkins or Tremaine Johnson. They move him around enough, and he plays in the slot and basically is a quasi tight end sometimes, and all of this other stuff. So I think Larry's viable.
Yeah, I think Larry's also shown us that he's just basically quarterback proof too. Larry's been exceptional this year. Like, hats off to him. They signed him for another year. It's probably smart on their part. Larry's just a class act, and he's been very good this year.
Just good. It's just good.
Yeah,
Cooper Kupp,
really
Robert Woods is out again, so Cooper Kupp is a good play this week. Sammy Watkins is not. He's playing Patrick Peterson.
That's what I was gonna say that. So thanks. Giants Raiders. I think this one's gonna be just super boring. Like I I hope this blows up in the Giants' face. I think it will blow up in the Giants' face. Geno Smith is terrible. I mean, he's
Are the Raiders going to get their second, third, fourth, and fifth interceptions this week? They got their first one last week.
I think you'll see 2 interceptions from the Giants' defense this week. They shut down Janoris Jenkins for the season, but I think they're still good enough and they get enough pressure that they can hurry either Geno Smith or Davis Webb. Both of those guys are fairly mobile, but they're not good in any way as far as quarterbacking is concerned. So I think it's going to be a really, really tough sledding week. I'm not playing any Giants this week because it's going to be Nathan Peterman 2.0. As far as Raiders are concerned,
well, Krabby and Cooper are out, so
yeah, I just don't know who I mean, maybe I'm pretty interested in Jared Cook this week because of the lack of options and because the Giants don't really cover anyone, and the Raiders don't have the same problem of needing extra help to block. They have a good line. So Jared Cook's probably the only person I want to play in this entire game. I'm still not like all high on Marshawn Lynch at this point. Like he still was not amazing last week. He had a productive day as far as fantasy was concerned, but I think he comes back down to reality this week. They still just don't use him that much.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. The Raiders are down their two best receivers, and we haven't really seen much of Derek Carr in the situation, so we don't know what he's going to do. Right. Normally, we know what he does. He throws it to Crabtree and then throws it to Cooper if they don't cover him. And then occasionally throws to Jared Cook. So yeah, Jared Cook's the guy for me, just because he's the only guy that Carr trusts. If you really need someone, Seth Roberts is the guy. You know, if you had for some reason both Cooper and Crabtree or something, and you really need somebody to play this week, right. It's just a 1 week thing. Both Cooper and Crabtree will be back next week. They reduced Crabtree's suspension by a game, so they'll both be back next week. So don't pick up Seth Roberts unless you need someone to get you into the playoffs this week.
Right. Next game, Panthers Saints.
This is my game of the week.
This is your game of the week?
Yep.
All right, I like it. This is very interesting. Panthers didn't practice a whole lot of people today. It was just Just saying, a lot of people sat when it seemed like their injuries were maybe a bit questionable. Maybe they are trying to rest up a little extra because this is a big division game. Game got flexed. They give people a couple extra hours to get ready. McCaffrey didn't practice today, so we don't know if he's going to play or not. Olsen is day-to-day. I expect him to play for this game, but I expect him to be a decoy more than anything else just because they don't have a ton of options. Funchess didn't practice today either with the toe, but he's likely to play. Joe, I think the biggest question for this entire game is with with Marshawn Lattimore and Ken Crawley being out, the Saints are just a different defense, period, right? It's not necessarily because those players are so good, which they are. I think they're both good at covering. I think they both have insane coverage grades for the entire year, and obviously when you look at them, they shut people down pretty well. I think it's more of who has to be forced into action, right, from the Saints side. They don't have a ton of depth at cornerback, and they've proven that with Devontae Harris, they just cannot shut anyone down. He was responsible for like 150 yards this past week and a touchdown. And it just allows the offense to play with such confidence that there's always an option to go to, that it really makes it difficult for the Saints to play the defense that they've been playing the rest of the year. Plus, if you can shut down the run on this team, it seems that it stagnates their offense much more than in the past. But I expect this to be a productive day for Michael Thomas, Drew Brees, Alvin Kamara especially, because the cornerbacks for the Panthers are still not good. And I'm still not sold that Cam is who we want Cam to be as far as a fantasy point is concerned. If McCaffrey plays, to me, he's got to be the most enticing play, though. What about you?
For me, it really is this simple. It's all about if Lattimore and Crawley are playing. If both of them are playing, then I don't want to play anybody on the Panthers, honestly. If neither of them are playing, I want every bit of Cam Newton. He's worth whatever they're charging. It just doesn't matter who the Saints play against. If Devontae Harris and Sterling Moore and PJ Williams have to be the starting three corners on this team, and Kenny Vaccaro has to play a big role in coverage, all of those guys are liabilities.
Yeah.
Sterling Moore is okay, and the rest of them are just liabilities in coverage.
Yeah.
I mean, Devontae Harris is so clueless that he was celebrating a pass breakup while Sammy Watkins was continuing to run down the field after he caught it over him. And Kenny Vaccaro stopped running 15 yards before Cooper Kupp caught the ball and almost ran in for a touchdown. So these guys, not only are they bad, they just don't have a clue what's going on.
Yeah.
It's just bad. They gave up 350 yards to Jared Goff last week, in addition to a 50-yard pass interference penalty on PJ Williams. None of them have any clue. They're all just awful. So if Lattimore and Crawley are out, then Cam Newton, I want him. If both of them are in, then I don't want him at all.
Right.
And if one of them's in, then he's a low-end QB1.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's fair. What about from the Saints side?
Yeah, I mean, Kamara and Ingram really are both unsittable. I think Kamara has the better chance in this game, but you have to play both of them. Just the Saints funnel their offense through those guys.
Yeah, I think they're truly unsittable at this point. There's not tons of players that are unsittable at this point in the season, but I think those two have to be on the top of your list.
Yeah, I think that the Saints need to get Ted Ginn more involved. He only got involved on the last drive in the Rams game, and he had all of the yards on the last drive. Yeah. But I think they need to get Ted Ginn more involved because it's clear that if you just shut down the running game, the Saints had problems against the Rams. So I think that they'll try to get Ted Ginn more involved this week also. Right. Mike Thomas is definitely playable.
Yeah, I agree. We're getting kind of close to the end of the time here, so we'll do the last games pretty quick. Real quick, Joe. Drew Brees has been obviously less than stellar as far as a fantasy standpoint is concerned this year. Where do you rank him this weekend? Like, give me a number ish that you'd be willing to say I'll start this guy over him if it gets to it.
Oh, he's just in that pack with guys like Matt Ryan. Mm-hmm. There's Brady up top.
Carson Wentz.
Carson Wentz is up top. And is there even anybody else? Oh, Russell Wilson's been playing really well. He's probably up there too.
Russell Wilson's up there. I would say that Phil is probably up there for right now, and another person strictly for this week is Kirk. Kirk's up there this week too.
Yeah, and Kirk Cousins has been playing spectacular, and he has some tough games coming up, but this week he looks like he's in the clear.
Yeah.
And Drew's in that next cloud of people,
Yeah,
like
that's where I would
low
put
end
him as well.
QB1 again. It's kind of like in that cloud of like he's probably should be starting unless you got one of the 5 guys we named above. You probably, but whatever. Like he's not unsittable anymore.
I give him a bump this week just because I think it's going to be a bit tough to run the ball, and the cornerbacks for the Panthers are pretty shoddy. So I give him a bump this week, but I agree. I think he's right in that low-end QB1. You're not going to sit him unless you have one of those other guys, but he's in the low-end QB1 bracket.
Okay, so guys, look, everybody's upset with Drew Brees this year. He's still on pace for like 4,500 yards, which would lead the league most years or be the top 3 or 4 most years. He's doing fine. He's not throwing interceptions, so he's not costing you points. He's doing fine. He's just not getting 40 touchdowns and 5,000 yards this year.
Yeah, he's just not being literally a top 3 fantasy player. That's it. All right. So the Sunday night game is Eagles-Seahawks. Joe, I mean, are you changing anything with the way that you play any of your Eagles this week?
No.
Okay, good. I agree. And I'm playing Russell on the other side. I really don't want a part of anyone else. Jimmy.
The only thing that I would change with the Eagles is the Seahawks have a really good run defense. And their pass defense is vulnerable right now. So I wasn't playing any of the Eagles running backs anyway.
Neither was I.
But if you were, you should think twice about it this week.
Yeah.
They have this committee now with Blunt and Ajayi. It's not really clear what's going on with that. They're still both getting a decent chunk of carries, and this Seahawks rush defense is really solid.
Yeah.
That's the only change. I'm just not playing them.
Yeah, and then on the other side, I only want Russell and Jimmy.
Yeah, the Seahawks offense is just too unpredictable, but Russell keeps pulling it out, so Russell and Jimmy are good to go.
Yep. Steelers-Bengals, Joe, this is an away Steelers game. I do think that it's worth noting that home Den is back. Home Steelers are back, right? And they have home
Steelers are back.
We mentioned the other week that they have a lot of games at home coming down the stretch, so that's important to keep an eye on. But these are still away Steelers, and whatever they're doing the night before, we don't want any part of that. So I don't want any part of this game probably other than Mixon had his coming out game last week, and obviously we see why he was such a talented player to begin with. Are you willing to play him this week?
If you have to, he's a flex for me this week. Steelers' defense is really good. They struggle against the Packers. I don't expect that to repeat itself. The defense tends to play better on the road.
They do. It's strange.
Perhaps because the offense plays bad. I don't know. They decide they have to make up for it. I don't know what the deal is, but they just play better on the road. So, Mixon's a flex for me because of the volume, but I see him kind of going back to one of these 15 carries, 45-yard kind of games.
To me, it looked like they were pretty committed to using him. I have him as an RB2 this week. I think he's a solid RB2 this week, and mainly because of what you mentioned, the volume. I still think they make poor decisions. Joe, I do think that we have to give some credit to the offensive line coach of the Bengals. We usually give credit to Tom Cable about around this time and the Patriots line coach around this time. The Bengals have played above their pay grade at offensive line. I still don't think they're a good unit. These are still not good players. But at some point, you got to give credit where credit's due, and they've played above their pay grade. So I have to give some credit to the offensive line coach of the Bengals. They've been playing pretty well. Obviously, I'm playing Antonio Brown. But that's the only person that I want to play on the Steelers side at all, and I'll play Joe Mixon as about an RB2. I'm playing A.J. Green if I have him in season long, but I'll probably fade him in DFS this week.
Mike skipped Lev Bell. You should also play him.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Of course, Bell. I just...
It's obvious, but just
sorry.
In case someone's listening and starts freaking out, play him.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry. Good catch. Excellent catch and a good way to send us off. That's all the games for this week, guys. Once again, if you need to get in touch with us, I know that there's some big decisions coming up for playoffs and stuff like that. If you have a very particular question, get in our ear. Ask someone, get in someone else's ear that can get in our ear. These are big weeks coming up. Some people have some huge money on the line. I know that there's people who play in $1,000+ leagues that have, potential for their decisions coming up to be the difference between, zero money or money lost rather, or, 20,000 plus, right? So those are a really big deal. If you need help, do not hesitate to get in touch with us. It should be a fun and exciting playoffs. Yeah, I'm just ready. Joe, give me the 2 things you're most excited to see this week.
Well, Falcons lose and the Saints win. Be my answer every week.
That's not fair. You gotta give me 2 fantasy things that you're looking to see this week that aren't based off of your fandom.
I am a little curious to see the Steelers offense here. I think that they'll they'll struggle again, but they have been playing well, and they had been struggling earlier in the season. So I just want to see what they do if they can keep it going. I don't think that they will. I think they'll struggle. The other thing is like I want to see the Chiefs play better.
Yeah, that was one of the things that I was considering talking about as well. It's just it seems a little foreign to me that it's.
Andy Reid is too good a coach not to figure this out.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think something's up. I think something's a bit strange, but I'm going to be pretty tuned into the Chiefs this weekend as well. My two have to be Jimmy Garoppolo and Josh Gordon to see if there's anything remotely worth taking away as value is concerned for the rest of the season, and then potentially next season, obviously, because with the 49ers having such long tenures and then Garoppolo being a free agent after the season, it could be some spicy offseason. We could be looking at some very interesting offseason negotiations and movement with some other QBs being available and on the market as well. So.
Yeah, both of those guys are really exciting from both a fantasy perspective for the rest of this year and for next year, and also from a real football perspective for this offseason.
Right.
Because there's also some uncertainty about Josh Gordon's future in Cleveland, because they owe him so much money and he's such a uncertainty.
Yeah, without a doubt.
It'll be exciting to see if he can be as good as he was before, because in which case he's probably worth it.
Oh, absolutely. Or not only that, even with the way that they like to hoard picks, he's probably worth just getting on the trade
second round pick or something.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, all right, that's all for us this week. We'll catch you guys next Wednesday, where playoffs will pretty much start for everyone. So good luck this week. Make sure that you make the right decisions. Keep everything that we talked about in mind, and we'll catch you guys next week. Peace.
Stay classy.